Croeso cynnes I chi gyd
Okay, so
yma.
very warm welcome to you all here from the farm live.
Welcome to you all here for our live demo event. My name is Dewi Hughes, fe'n yw Dewi Hughes, a gallai hefyd eich cyflwyno chi I...
I also introduce you to Sian and Leon.
So, croeso cynnes I chi.
So very warm welcome to you here to Moelogan here at Llanrwst.
Welcome to you all here in Llanrwst, in Moelogan in Llanrwst. Most of my talk, or most of the speakers this evening will be in Welsh, but there is a translation facility available, so I'll just explain how that works, start off with. So if you go hovering, if you've got an iPad or a computer, if you hover on your iPad, it's on the top right. If you go in there and hover on languages options, so the original feed is in Welsh, and then if you select Korean, that'll give you then the English feed. So if you go onto that, and that'll give you the appropriate language, so it'll be simultaneously translated. Hopefully that works well. If not, please put a question in on the chat, and then we'll explain to you over chat if needed. Right, so I hope that all works
Okay,
well.
so I hope that works well for you. We're glad that you're able to join us this evening at Moelogan. Certainly, we accept that this is pretty much second best to having a real on-farm event as we'd usually gather here. But just to show you that the weather here this evening is absolutely atrocious. I think you're better off on your sofa or in your study at home, bearing in mind the weather here. But we have a comprehensive programme ahead this evening where we'll have an overview of the project work here, and also we'll talk a bit more about the activities ongoing here at Moelogan. It's absolutely imperative that you send us questions on the chat and so forth to be as interactive as possible. So I do encourage you to submit your questions during the event in order for us to ensure that we answer the questions that you want answered, as opposed to just rambling on about something that may not be relevant. So please do submit your questions to us and we'll answer the questions that you want answered. So this evening, as I said, we'll be talking about the business here at Moelogan. Then we'll have Guillaume Parry, who is the technical officer working for Farm and Connect, and he'll just talk a bit about the way that this project was set up on farm as we've trialed the SmartX equipment and the heat detection. So there'll be a bit of a chat about that, and also Helen Holland from SmartX will join us to explain the equipment itself. We've also got Iwan Parry joining us, who's a vet from the Dolgellau area joining us, and I'm certain that he is a familiar face for a number of you. We're vastly very lucky to have his vast experience committed to this project, and we compare Iwan's experience and also this technology and how they both worked together. We'll also be having an update from John Richards about the market outlook. He works for HCC as a market lead, and we'll close with a few words from Gitta Owen, who is the local development officer here in the Llanrwst area, and he will talk about some of the activities and the services available via the Farm and Connect programme. But first of all, I need to present you to the stars of this event. I'm exceptionally glad that you are demonstration farmers for us and that we've been able to undertake some work here. It's an exciting project that we're collaborating with you on, so thank you very much for having us, for hosting us this evening, and for undertaking the project work with us. So with those few words, if we can talk a bit about Moelogan, a bit of the background to your business and so forth. Who's going to go first? Who's going to get the ball rolling? We've been here at Moelogan for some 2 years or so. We started farming in 2013, having worked on a dairy unit for 18 years or so. We came from National Trust Farm in Penrachno. We had an opportunity to come here, and we've got about 1,000 sheep and about 130 cattle. And the intention is to possibly cut down the sheep and increase the cattle. We've got greater interest in the cattle, a bit easier to handle maybe. So we keep stabilise the cattle. So on screen there, you could see the imagery of the farm. And we've got Proma here doing the AI of the cattle, so the viewers can now see the type of farm that you have, the topography. You're on upland farm up to 1,500 feet. That's the highest point of the farm. And where we are stood here, we're about 1,000 feet here on this yard, so that gives you an idea of where we are geographically and the topography that we're talking about. So we've got peaty land at the top and improved land at the bottom end of the farm. It's all quite heavy land, honestly. It's either clay or peat, so dry weather suits us grand. That dry weather we had feels a while ago by now. It's about a month ago, and that suited this farm well, I take. Yes, it did, actually. Heat does suit this farm better than anything else for us to farm it, far better than wet weather. That proves to be quite challenging for us. With a bit of luck, then we'll have finer weather and some sun shortly. So in terms then of the stock and so forth, what you have in terms of ewes, and we'll talk a bit more about the cattle later. Yeah, as I said, it's about 1,000 ewes, some 400 Welsh, and the rest are crossbreds. We cross with Aberfield, and there's some Abertecs in there, and we put a Welsh back onto them again, and some Cheviots as well. We sell, well, all the lamb actually go off grass, and we rear our own replacement in that respect. So the greater part of this event will focus on the cattle. So do you want to give us a bit of a context or a background to the herd? I understand that you're into your stabilizers. Why have you got on that line? What are your numbers like, and what are you aiming to be at for the forthcoming years? We've been interested in stabilizer for a number of years. When we started farming, actually, we decided that we would have stabilizer cattle. And I don't think you've come from a show cattle background and dairying. You thought about crossbreds and so forth. Now we've just seen how handy stabilizers are. They're very easy calvers. It's not sort of tiresome in terms of labour in that respect. They're very fertile cattle, and they found their place really. And we've come to like them. Some excellent traits. Now clearly, the viewers will be able to see how docile the cattle are, and certainly for that system, for the system that you have here, where they're in and out very often to do the eye, it's imperative that they are docile and easily handled. I'd imagine that that is an attribute that you put high value on. Yes, it's absolutely key to have them quiet cattle. They're quite nosy actually, and they'll come to us most of the time. So in terms then of the attributes and again the traits that you look for mainly in terms of the cattle, because the stabilizer herd is quite innovative in the way that EBVs are used and the way that genomics are used. So what is the emphasis and what do you focus on mainly? Well, we try to balance it, to be honest. That's the one big advantage of using AI, whereas if you're looking for something that's more maternal or something that's more terminal, you can actually select your bulls to match the cattle and what your aims are. If we feel that we're going too far down a maternal line, we can pull back from that. So it's just a matter of matching the bull to the cattle. The fertility and the low birth weight is an important thing. We try to get the heifers to calve to be at around 380, 400 kilos at around 14 months, and we try not to use any concentrates, just silage and grazed grass. Effectively, we're trying to do everything we can off grass and buying as little as possible. But certainly, to have a profitable suckler herd, everything has to be put in place. We've touched on a number of things already there in terms of fertility, in terms of the production level, but it's important to look at all those elements, ensuring that the genetics are working well for you. Okay, and in terms of the next steps then, what are your aspirations for the business? Where do you want us to go in the next years? What are your aims? I think it's to increase the herd. We are trying to do rotational grazing. There are parts of the farm where we've started to implement that, and we want to expand on that. And really, to try to increase the cattle number. We have been trying to increase cattle numbers, so we've been trying to select essentially what we want to keep, hoping that in the next few years we'll be able to move down a line that we aspire to go down. And since you do all the AI work yourself, you can obviously carefully select which bulls go on to which cows and so forth, and you can choose your traits. All the AI is done by yourself. You mentioned earlier that you had undertaken Farmer Connect training to do AI. Obviously, you've hit a 70% conception rate in the first round, so I'd say that's very successful. So obviously you're confident in what you do and in doing the DIY AI. Maybe luck as much as anything else. Yeah, honestly, since we were buying semen through the stabilizers, we had to go through Cogent, and it would be a costly system otherwise, since genus are working predominantly this area. So through Farming Connect help, it didn't cost all that much to turn my hand to the DIY AI. It's a key skill, and since there is assistance available, you avail yourselves of it. I think, to be honest, it's easier to inseminate at the opportune time. I think that's important. If you've got someone coming in, they turn up when they turn up, and that's out of your control. Possibly it may well be at the wrong time. We try to serve morning and night to try to get a better timing and a better hit rate. So I'll bring Gwion in now, if I may, who's the technical officer who has been a part of the development of the work on this project, who's been helping you with the genetic side and focusing on fertility. And you mentioned serving in the morning and in the evening. How reliant are you on, if that cow is bulling, you have to get that timing right, to get that done right, especially with young heifers. It is difficult, I acknowledge, to get that timing right. So obviously that's what we've looked at during this project. So in your view, does the technology work? Yes, it does to date. We've been watching them as well, because this is a trial and we are trying to see if it does work. We don't want to miss the cattle because it's a trial. So my father and Leon have both been watching as well. And I've been at the office sort of keeping a check on who's bulling and when, etc. And then matching it up with what Leon and my father has seen. And we keep and compare notes. We did that for a month or so before we started serving, just to establish a pattern or a trend, really, for us to see how everyone was cycling and if it was done as it should be done. So it's worked quite well so far. It's obviously helpful in terms of herd health, because it can identify any issues, temperature and so forth. I think within a week we had notification, a ping on the phone with the SmackTex app saying that 2 had particularly high temperature. At the start we weren't concerned, but after a day or so the temperature was still high, so we then got the vet to look at them to see if they had a temperature or not, and they actually did, and it was most likely an infection of some sort. We had 2 that broke a fence and ran to the other side of the farm last week, so it helped us to identify that. But those are fine, and hopefully they weren't worse for wear from any antibiotics. From a visual inspection, you couldn't see that they were under the weather, but having had the vet here to look at things, obviously he confirmed that there was a temperature, possibly because there was infection, and we managed to nip whatever the condition was in the bud. And I think that's key, to try to nip any illnesses in the bud and to reduce the use of antibiotics. And hopefully you catch it before the condition deteriorates. You touched there on some of the key attributes for the herd and what the standards that you were looking for in terms of fertility. I'm glad that you're in charge of collecting the data and so forth, and you mentioned that the calving interval from calf to calf, you're very close to the 365 mark, which is the sort of the key aim, bearing in mind, of course, that the average in the UK is 4 to 5 days, which is quite high, to be honest. So you're looking at a loss of 60 days per year there. and it's £5 per day on everything that you miss. So I think you're close to the mark on that. So obviously, what's the next step then to try to reduce your carving index? I think it was 13 weeks. Our calving period was 13 weeks, so we tried to reduce that period down. Cows were 11 weeks. We tried to start serving heifers about a fortnight before the cows in order for them to have a bit more time to overcome things. We try to breed them at 14 months. They are quite young, but it gives them a bit more time to recover from calving, to put a bit more condition on. I think the heifers were 30 weeks, the cows were 11 weeks. We'd like to bring it down to 8, but I think we'd be comfortable and happy at 10. If you can put that into a bit of a context then. So there are a number of goat herds are at around the 14 weeks. The objective is 12. Well, you're under 12 already, so you're obviously performing well already in that respect, and you feel that there's scope to improve. That's fantastic. It's an excellent opportunity for us to do some trial work with you to achieve that. But before we move on to get a bit more information about the project itself, what would success look like to you? I think it would be reduced labour, to be honest. We watch the cattle now, and it's fantastic. I think it'd be difficult to replace what we do. It takes a fair bit of time to watch them and to. I can't see us being able to rely 100% on any technology. There'll always be an element of watching them, but I think it's getting the technology to do the great part of the work for us. And to catch the silent heat as well. There are some heifers that we haven't seen bulling, but they have been. And possibly with the calves as well. I mean, I think you get a notification 48 hours before calving, so we're quite lucky with the stabilizers that they calve quite easily. With the heifers, if you've got warning, you're forewarned, you're forearmed, and you're prepared to watch them maybe. Helen will talk a bit more about what the equipment is able to do for you. You've mentioned some key things there, which the health, the heat detection, and also when they calve. So there are some key points there that we can ask Helen to touch on. If we could bring Gwion in then to this conversation. Gwion, I know that you've been a key part of the development of this project here at Moelogan. So if we could have a quick word with you, Gwion, just to get some insight from you as to how it's worked and what were some of the challenges for you here at Moelogan, and what other farmers can learn from the lessons that we've seen here. So Gwion, an update from you, please. Good evening, everyone. As you know already, our intention as Farming Connect, when we run these projects on demonstration farms, is to improve business performance, to reduce carbon footprint, and that runs hand in hand, essentially, with improving efficiency. And in this case, innovation enabled us to do that. The first step on all demonstration farms is to have a baseline review of the business to see the opportunities that we have to improve things or to strengthen the business or to work on farm strengths or even making minor adjustments to get even more efficiency. The first meeting that I had with Cleo and Sian, it was obvious that they were very hands-on with the cattle and that making use of AI to get genetic gain was an important aspect for them. We then looked at the business review and we saw that the calving pattern in a way was 13 weeks and they wanted to reduce that. In terms of calving index, they are bang on already, but wanted to reduce that calving pattern, which is difficult to do when you're using increased level of AI because of the labour it involves to observe, to watch the cattle and to catch them bulling. So what we did was we looked at the availability of innovation and technology that could assist us to this end, that could help us with reducing that labour element, that would help us with heat detection, and then we were able to invest in this kit and then record the performance of that kit to see how it would assist us in future. Now, we came across Smackstech, who produced the bolus, obviously sat in the cow. The biggest problem that we have in the red meat industry at the moment is that every piece of innovative technology like this has been designed predominantly for the dairy sector, cattle that are in more often in daily for milking, etc. So we needed to possibly adjust this technology to fit into the system that we had here in Moelogan. And that meant that we were able to use it in the heifers initially, since we didn't want to use prids and estimate, etc. So we focused on those things initially. The heifers at Moelogan, they are on a rotational grazing system, so we knew that the paddock that they would be in every day was a relatively small paddock, which meant that this bolus would connect to the base station, which essentially gathers all the data. We knew that that was important, and we knew it was possible. We then proceeded to look at some mobile pieces of equipment, as a number of things over the past few months. COVID-19 actually impacted this, where Helen from Smassex was able to be on farm to change the system and to help. We've been fortunate to have Llŷn and Sian as individuals who are so enthusiastic, proactive, and who were able to use the technology, who modified an old quad to enable the technology to be moved around the farm with the heifers as they go on their grazing rotations. So in terms of difficulties and issues or obstacles, the things that happen naturally in rural Wales, obviously, we have some difficulties with mobile phone signal. The system initially used the 2G system, which is the most basic level of mobile signal. That wasn't successful at the outset, and then we changed to have a 4G SIM card, which can use a wide range of signals, Vodafone and all the rest of it. And since then, things have worked a bit better for us. Moving on from that then, we were able to start to data record and heifers. I think it's been absolutely crucial that the boluses have been in the heifers and have been there for a few weeks prior to the mating season starting, in order for that bolus to start to learn about its host animal, and for us to be able to look at the data that was being collected and collated from those heifers, and that we were able to analyze that data ourselves and to familiarize ourselves with the system and with the program essentially. And that became obvious around a fortnight or so ago, where Iwan Parry, the veterinarian, had checked a few heifers that hadn't been picked up as being bulling, but he was convinced that they had been having done some tests on them. Because of that, we were able to go back to Maxex and to see if they could reduce the threshold that it takes for a notification to be triggered for heat, to reduce the threshold somewhat, so then it would catch each and every bulling instance. As with every technology, there are tweaks and adjustments that you need to make, but by the time that we learn from the process, obviously it's a process, we learn from the technology learns from the cattle, and I think that process was a successful one, and it's currently proving to be successful, and I hope that that is a trend that will continue for us. Moving ahead then, I know that Llŷn and Sian have started to AI, and everything is going well there. As we move on, we'll be able to continue to observe the data, and we'll be able to see if the heifers will come bulling again after they've been cycled. Obviously, they won't be in calf. But to the opposite, if we don't see them cycling again, we'll be aware that they are in calf, that they've been impregnated, and that'll give us a guess as to when that animal will calve down in terms of looking at a gestation period, and that'll enable us to possibly change or vary the diet that they've had, or we'll keep them out longer in the winter period. The volume or the amount of data that you can gather, not just in terms of heat detection, as we're experiencing now, but the volume of data that you can have will help you manage the heifers and these cattle for the rest of their working lives. So you've got the herd health aspect that's been already mentioned. When you focus on performance management, when you look to improve the animal's performance, to reduce antibiotic usage, to reduce losses possibly, and even to manage performance in terms of seeing which line of genetics actually perform better in terms of consistency or are more resistance to certain diseases. Data is something that's exceptionally powerful when used properly. The only thing that holds us back essentially is how much we can analyze of it. So, as I say, that's the only constraint. Those are the only difficulties that we've had. I think having problems sometimes will offer you more in terms of potential solutions than the initial issue that you were starting with. So far so good in terms of technology. That's a description of what we've been doing currently, but it's an exciting time for red meat production that we've got all this technology that can be used in our industry. Thank you very much, Gwion. Glad to have a context there, and as you mentioned, the challenges and obstacles can often bring forth opportunities, and certainly it's led to some advantages here. You, as farmers, have availed yourselves of some of those advantages, and it'd be interesting to hear that we challenge the technology that were initially designed for dairy cattle as a demonstration farm. That's what we meant to do, is to trial technology and to challenge it and to see how it works and how it performs. Gwion has spoken about some of the key issues that we've looked at there: heat detection, bird health, and so forth. So in terms of experience to date, it's been challenging, yes. You're at the top then, as Gwion mentioned, the use of solar panel to power things. Again, it's an innovative approach that we trial. So it's not in and around the sheds. So it's an innovative approach. Yes, it is. I think it was you that fabricated the trailer. It was quite easy, to be honest. Helen, in all fairness, had been excellent in how she described to us what was needed and what was necessary. So we were able to work on a trailer for that. We had to put the base station a bit higher and just a few minor adjustments. But it's quite trouble-free, to be honest. And we move it on with the heifers. Okay, excellent. If I could also plug one of the Farm Connect services that's available, the one-to-one surgeries. So if you need specific advice on anything with your business, you can get in touch with your local development officer, and he or she can help you. We've got assistance available. Although it can't be delivered face-to-face at the moment, you can have business advice, technology advice, grazing advice, health and nutrition. There are so many aspects of advice that can be provided.
Ask Helen Hollingsworth from SmackTech to join the discussion and perhaps give a bit more information on how the technology works, and perhaps sort of how it can be developed onto a beef system. And I know we're discussing how it's being implemented here from a technological point of view, and also from the company's perspective. It'd be nice to hear how it's set up, and perhaps the additionality perhaps the technology can offer as well. So Helen, if you can join in now and present I know you've got a few slides to show us as well, so over to you.
Hi there, yes, hello everyone. I apologise because my Welsh is non-existent, so if I repeat anything, sorry for that. Firstly, I'd just like to say that when SmackTech were asked to be part of this Farming Connect project, we were delighted to have a chance to demonstrate how the system can benefit farmers. And to be honest with you, working alongside Clean and Sian was brilliant, because they just took to this like a duck to water and were fantastic to work with. So without further ado, I'll give you a little bit of an overview on SmackTech and how it works, all being well. So basically, SmackTech are the market leader in intraruminal measurement of temperature, activity and rumen pH values. There isn't any other system that does what it does in one package, and it's just great having the bolus inside the cow because it's very accurate information. The company was founded in 2009 as a research project, and then in 2016 it was commercialized, and that's when I got involved with selling the SmackTech system and doing support for farmers. So it's been well and truly tried and tested. There's over 5 billion cow data points now, and it's growing every second. We've got over 50 employees in the headquarters in Austria and Germany, and also in the UK now. and there's over 50,000 boluses that have been sold now in over 25 countries. So it's really worldwide. And we've also won awards and so on for the innovation that it provides. So this is a bit of a overview of how it works. So you basically have the bolus, which is administered to the cow like you would any medicine bolus. Sits inside the reticulum of the cow, and it stays there for the duration of her life. It's got about a 4 to 5 year battery life, and it sends out a signal to the base unit with all the information that it's gathered. It can store up to 50 days of data on that bolus, so if cows are away grazing from the reader, that's not a problem. It will still store it. Sends it to the base unit, and then that information is sent to the server to be evaluated, and then that gets sent via an alert to the farmer's phone or his computer, whichever their choice is. They can have as many users as they like using the system, and then the farmer acts on the alert and takes action depending on what the alert tells him. So it could say it'll have the cow's number and whether it's an estrus or a health or a calving. So that's an overview of it. As far as Moelogan Farm went, it's obviously a suckler herd in Wales, and 39 heifers had the bolus put into them, and we used the Smaxtec Classic bolus, which is the one to measure temperature and activity. And they have a dashboard. I don't think you can see it that clearly on here, but basically it's split into 3 sections. So it's got the herdsman's action list, which will tell them which cows are needing to be inseminated, which ones need pregnancy checking, any that are due to calve, and so on. And then the middle section is the health alerts. So it's split down into temperature, drinking alerts, and activity. And then the final one is the fertility checklist. So that's really just alerting to the farmer to any cows that might have suspicious heats or possibly a barren, or they're open, ready for serving. So it gives the farmer, a bit of an idea of what needs to be done with those cows and if they need to be vet checked. And then here we've got an example of the sort of graph that you would see. This is actually one of Moelogan's heifers. So this was her health alert that she had. So I don't know if you can see it, but the top line is in blue, and that's her temperature. There's a grey line that tracks along to see what is her normal temperature, and any deviation from that will send an alert to the farmer. So this cow had, not only did she have a temperature, but it was sustained. So it kept occurring over a couple of days. And also you can see that every dip in that blue line is her drinking. So it's monitoring her drinking status as well. And in that period, she barely drank. So because of this alert, and because I was talking to Sean McLean, we were able to get the vet to have a look at her, and he did realise there was a problem with her. So they were able to treat her by drenching her and giving her anti-inflammatories. And that then brought her temperature back down. As you can see, it went a little bit subnormal for a while, and then it evened out. Her activity became more normal, and then she some days later she came up with an estrus, so a bulling event, which meant that she was back on track basically. So that was really good. This was a heat these are heats that have been detected on heifer 458, and there was a nice pattern to this, and it was nice that we put the bolus in ahead of time before they wanted to start inseminating, because they could see her pattern of bulling events and realise that that was a nice normal set apart events of heats, and that they could say with some assurity that that was normal, and when they were going to inseminate her, that would be the right time to do it. So basically, just using this, they can again, you can't quite see it properly, but there is an insemination window down here, which just tells the farmer the best time to serve the heifer or the cow. It looks at her peak of activity, and then 8 to 10 hours later, it will start to say, right, you can serve from here. It'll go all the way through until you get to the red line, which is basically saying that's too late now. There's no point inseminating her and wasting a straw on her. So gives you really good, accurate time to serve, and therefore better conception rates from that. And then this, we clicked across to what's called the heat index. So the other one showed you all the activity and temperature. This just makes it all a little clearer. So these really big peaks here were her bulling activity, and they were really nice on this girl. And as you can see, they were 20 days apart and then 18 days apart. So a nice normal cycling pattern, which is just, it makes it a lot clearer for the farmer to know, yes, that was definitely a bulling event. It was way up into the required area to say that's a bulling event. And in actual fact, we did find on Moelogan that we were missing a couple of heifers. So we were able to change the threshold that the cows have to reach to give us an alert. And that helped us pick up the last few. So that sort of thing can be tweaked on any farm to help better pick up those heats. And then this is an example of what they will be getting as a calving alert later on. So calving is done by a drop in temperature. Every mammal, 36 hours before they give birth, will have a drop in temperature about 0.5 degree. And when that happens, an alert is sent to the farmer's phone, and usually from the time they get that alert, calf being born is between 6 and 18 hours. So it just gives a chance to take those animals to the calving area and know that they're the ones you've got to keep an eye on, because calf's on its way. It's helped avoid so many problems like calves being born in the yard or in cubicles, and it's just meant the farmers can do a much more focused approach to the calving and avoid any complications. So really the system can provide 98% of heats can be detected. There's always going to be the odd few that manage to evade us. And about 92% of calving detection is got, although I think it probably is higher than that, but that just gives you a bit of an idea. So basically that is it in a nutshell. Here's a testimonial from one of our farmers. This is a Jersey herd down in Cornwall. And what they really like is the actual concept of continuously monitoring the cow's internal temperature so they can get an accurate picture of her health without even needing to see her. I've often heard people saying it's a bit like having a vet inside the cow or another pair of hands on the farm. So that's quite a nice analogy to have. So that's us, and I can hand back now to Dewey and Sean and Cleon, and they can carry on the rest of the presentation.
Great, thanks very much, Helen. I think that's a lot of useful information there and some real insights on how the technology can be best used. And while you were talking there, Cleon was showing me his phone, and actually he's got 2 cows there that have gone too far now for insemination. Thankfully he inseminated them this afternoon, so it's all good. But it gives you an example there of sort of how interactive and how up to date, how live the data is. Yeah, no, it's quite useful really to see how that's working. But we're just going to show you the base station up on the top of the hill there. Apologies if you're getting some of the noise of the rain, but we're under a tin roof and there's a fair bit of rain coming down here. You might be able to see it in the background there. But yeah, there's a fair bit of rain. Helen, if I can just ask you a couple of questions really. You mentioned during your presentation about programming and setting the threshold. Also, Sian has been discussing that they might have missed some heats earlier on, particularly with the heifers. So they might have been silent heats or perhaps false heats. This is the base station that Cleon designed and prepared. So it's up on the top of the hill. So there's no power there. So that's why we had to use the solar panels to feed that in. So it works really well. So we're getting the data coming through onto Cleon's phone. So yeah, Helen, so if I could just bring you back again, please, for just the programming element of it. I know, Sian, you've been keeping a close eye as well on that data.
Yeah, I think it was really good because both Cleon and Sian got very involved in, and they would tell me if they'd actually seen a cow bulling or a heifer bulling, and it was a really nice thing to be able to monitor them outside using that solar unit with a battery to keep it powered up. So yeah.
I was just going to follow up on the setting the threshold. I've got some questions coming through, and I'm really keen to keep the audience participation going on. So yeah, I encourage you to do that, please. We've got yeah. If you could just just explain really on the pricing structure, so the costs of the bowlers and the base station. So if you could just explain sort of the cost of them. So then we'll come back then to Cleon and Sian. Sorry, Cleon and Sian. With regards to sort of return on investment and when they think they get the payments back on that. So Helen, if you can just touch on the costs, please.
Yeah, sure. Just to briefly go on to your point that I missed out just now, which was on setting the heat threshold. If we find that we're missing heats, so the farmer says, look, I visually saw that one bulling and you didn't, the system didn't see a heat, we can actually change the threshold to make sure we do pick those up, so we can make it lower if we're missing them, or if we're getting too many false heats, we can raise it up. So that's one thing we can do. And then on to the pricing. For suckler herds, we got a setup price of £4,000, which is the base station and the solar unit and all the installation that we do and the support. And then the boluses are £30 to buy each, and then there's a £3 maintenance fee per cow. And that then gives a lifetime guarantee on that bolus. So when the battery runs out, the farmer just gets another one replaced free of charge. It also future-proofs it, because it means that any software or hardware that is updated will just get done automatically for that farm. Basically, they can just have support 24/7. That's all included in the price.
Thanks, Helen. So the £4,000, the initial outlay, and then £30 per bolus. So in terms of return on investment, how soon did you get that?
Wel, bod ni'n weld sut mae nhw'n dal, really, ond yeah,
return investment depends on how the cattle conceive. We used to use the seeder program on heifers, and that was, it was a matter of timing. When we put the seeders in, we put them all in at the same time. That was quite a costly exercise, £43 or something like that, but it was an okay system. But we are just trying to work more on a natural basis than what we did previously. I'd imagine in terms of return, we'll have had it in about 3 years. It's a job to put your value on time, how much time will it save, etc. And I also think that, you know, we're at the start of this project right now. We haven't had the calves as of yet, so we haven't experienced the sort of notification for that. If everything works as it has done to date, I'd imagine it will be worth it. As you mentioned, there's saving to read on time when you've got the health element. We looked at one particular cow there, where possibly you managed to catch her soon enough to treat her easily and in a cheap way. That'll pay for itself quite quickly. Also, we've had a few more questions in. Chloe Spencer has asked a few questions. Apologies that I didn't get back to you sooner than this, Chloe. So Chloe's asked, have you got a bull on farm at all? And also he's asked, is it just the temperature within the animal that gives a heat alert? We'll ask that to Helen. So do you keep a bull at all? Yes, we keep 2 bulls on farm. In terms of heifers, there's 1.5 cycles of AI. and then the bull goes into them, and similarly with the cattle. We meant to give 2 cycles, and then we keep 2 bulls, and we swap those on a weekly basis, just as sweepers. Okay, thank you. I hope, Chloe, that answers your questions.
For
Helen?
you then, with regards to the heat detection, is it just the temperature within the bolus that detects that? So if you could just perhaps mention how that works, how that technology works, if you could please.
Yeah, it's done on activity of the animal. So basically it learns what her normal activity is and then looks for behaviour changes around time that a cow would be bulling. Once it sees a change in her activity, it's got an algorithm to look for certain changes. And once those criteria are met, it will then send you an alert to say that it's a bulling event. Sometimes we will get animals that have a temperature at the same time, but that's not what we'd rely on. The temperature really is for the health side of things.
Thanks, Ellen. So I know, sorry, we apologise, we're running slightly behind time, but I've heard one other farmer using this technology, and after completing the serving cycles, they send the cattle out perhaps to fields that might not necessarily be close to the substation itself. So you can then collect the data every day or every other day. So they've got, Helen, you can correct me on this. So how long can you collect the data? So you can go, perhaps put the base station on the back of a pickup and then go to that field to collect to harvest the data, as it were. Is that an option that farmers can use, or if they have to be close to the base station, as it were?
Yeah, the data on the bolus is stored for 50 days. So as soon as you take a base station near to the cows, they need to be within 30 metres of the base station. But as soon as that happens, the bolus will start sending the data, and that'll any alerts that would have come up in that time, or any health issues, will be sent to the farmer, and all that data will be there regardless of how long it's been since she was near that base station. So yes, it's definitely an option to move it to another field. The only thing I would say is, if you are wanting to inseminate the heifers or the cows, then you really would want them to be coming within range of the base station at least twice a day, just so you can inseminate them in a timely fashion.
But I guess the power of taking the base station to the cattle, if you've finished serving and you just wanted to monitor the health, perhaps, so that's perhaps a useful tool as well. So when you're not serving them, they're in a different field. Okay, diolch Helen. We'll probably come back to you later on for the Q&A session. We'll move on now, but then it's symud ymlaen rwan I gael sgwrs efo Iwan.
To have a conversation with Iwan Parry, the veterinarian who's been helping out here at Moelogan, and possibly we've been comparing Iwan's experience with this new technology and to see how both compete, if you will, against one another. So Iwan will talk a bit now about how data can help efficiency to develop the herd, or to ensure that the information that we have is reliable and trustworthy, and that we can make decisions based on that. It's important that you get the right data to facilitate the correct decisions. Iwan, over to you, just for you to present the veterinary side of things. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sian and Leon. The importance of data is to be seen daily in so many different areas, because data, in actual fact, is the source of information. And using that most up-to-date information that's specific to this particular herd in order to strive for efficient production and profitable production, and to ensure that, it is imperative that we benchmark and that we assess our targets frequently. Sian and Leon mentioned the tight calving pattern. I've had the privilege of being associated with Moelogan for over 30 years, looking at fertility. We've managed to get a tight calving pattern. Talking about a tight calving pattern is one thing. Achieving it and keeping it tight without any difficulty from year to year is a challenge. And certainly, when we add the inclusion of AI to get other advantages, that also will present its own challenges. And certainly one of the key things when we look at data and using this project work at Moelogan is to see where we were coming from in terms of a good starting point for herd fertility to how we could improve on what was being done in Moelogan utilising new technology. On the other hand, you have to ensure that the data that we use is valid and reliable. And in discussing this project, instantly we turn to discussing heifers, because heifer management effectively is the cornerstone of long-term fertility in any herd. And in addition to the data that was derived from the bolus within that heifer, we added the other data set into that mix. And the data that we talked about with this aspect of fertility, inspecting the heifers, we assessed the maturity of those heifers in terms of fertility and started, Leon and Sian record the weight of the heifers regularly. And age isn't the determining factor for readiness for breeding, but weight. Then an ultrasound inspection that would assess and score the maturity of the reproductive organs. It's the same system as is being used in America. And just for us to be aware that it's information that we can use. And in the same way, we would measure the width and diameter of the pelvis. And by bringing all these factors together, we were able to build a picture and see if there were any family lines that were contributing factors to some of the data sets that we were looking at. And while collaborating with this project, there was a means, as has already been mentioned, and I will repeat it, a means to assess the reliability of the data. That I feel is imperative. As Leon said, it's imperative that we are able to trust, that we have confidence in what the information tells us in order for us to base our decisions for the future. And what we did at this point was we acquired information from 3 sources. The information from the bolus, straight to Sian, and that was in digital format, and we own that. Then the visual information from 2 experienced farmers, in Bobby and Leon, inspecting and observing to see if the heifers were visually bulling, and coupled with that, blindly, I would input information based on a veterinary inspection. So what I was trying to do essentially was trying to attribute where that heifer stood in terms of her cycle. Was that heifer fertile? Had she been bulling, or was she about to come bulling, and so forth? And the example that we had was that some of the heifers, some of the less mature heifers in our scoring were the ones who were latest bulling. So the bolus noted one on June 16th. There was a small group that weren't showing much movement in terms of fertility. We were able to assess that by doing the assessment without knowing it. It was done blindly. And in doing so, we gained some confidence and were able to have assurance that the data from the bolus was actually reliable. Now, of course, with all the information that we have from these various sources, from the bolus, from the veterinary work and the observation, the information about herd health in its entirety is absolutely key to any successful management. Now, herd health has to be of the highest order if we are going to target higher level performance. That is absolutely imperative, and in a way, we are producing another data set by regularly testing for ailments and illnesses and disease, by keeping or by striving to achieve a healthy herd. The checks that are carried out, tests that are long established in terms of reliability, and that would be pointless in implementing this type of project without first establishing the herd health. So in terms of the heifers, again, if you are going to invest in the rearing of heifers, it's absolutely imperative that the herd is clean and free from Johne's disease, because consider it, if we invest to rear a heifer, we get her in calf, she calves down, but before she comes to the age where she becomes profitable, she goes down with Johne's disease and you lose her. That leads to a loss. In the same way, if you invest in a heifer and she aborts, and that happens to each and every one of us, it's obviously causing a loss. We want to know what the status of Leptospira in the herd is. Do we vaccinate? Do we not? And we keep the most up-to-date information possible, annual information of what the level of the disease is when in herd. It causes abortion, among other things. And in the same way, we've got BVD, bovine viral diarrhea, that tends to lead to the loss of embryo sooner in that period of being in calf. Or Neospora, something that's become more prominent over the past decade or so. And that, again, is challenging, something that we cannot afford to ignore, and something that's been around for a fair while, but that's recurring more often. It's the Bacillus ligiformis. It's currently becoming prominent in Scotland as one of the main causes for abortion in the settler herd, and that is due to feeding substandard silage. And as we talk about silage, Cleon and Gwion wanted to talk about the importance of feeding. And that starts in the target that we have to set ourselves for getting to the right weight at the appropriate time in terms of herd management. So the daily live weight gain, how much weight they gain on a daily basis, is absolutely imperative. As we mentioned earlier, weight is the determining factor for being fit to breed or not. It's not to do with age. And therefore, continuing with monitoring the data pertaining to feed and silage, as Sian and Leo are doing, is imperative. During the bulling phase, then, it's imperative that the silage quality is consistent and that we don't want to see any great variation in that. In the same way, we need to ensure, and Farming Connect have done a lot of work on this, to ensure that the right levels of selenium, copper and iodine, these trace elements, that they are at the correct level within the feed, whether you need to add it as another bolus or that you know that what you feed is sufficient, and you can establish that by testing land and testing blood. Now, obviously, that builds a data set of essential information that we'll include in the mix to ensure that we are able to make decisions that in the long term will help us to target the best possible performing herd and hopefully as profitable as possible. Now, it's been a fair bit of fun actually, and a great joy to collaborate and to work with this most recent technology. And I was absolutely delighted to have had the opportunity to do this. Without a shadow of a doubt, this bolus and the additional information that we have from working with one another does enrich the data sets that we have. And when you enrich those data sets, it immediately creates a new level of information that enables you to use beneficially as we move ahead to the future, and a challenging future. It's already been mentioned that we've talked about using hormones to cedar or prostaglandins to assist that process of creating tight calving patterns. But this is a way that enables us to get them to conceive naturally, to get them to work naturally. And this is something that I feel will become ever more prominent as the years go by. You saw on that film there where the cattle are handled and treated. That goes back to Sian's father's period, and we together created a system there to handle cattle that wasn't close to a yard. I remember people thinking that we were absolutely crazy to do it, but there's a reason as to why Robin has put that crush and race there. All the land around there and that facility is at the centre, and it's easy to move the cattle into the centre area to administer AI. And from work done in other places, it's been proven that there's an increase of up to 5% when you use a system like this in calving percentage. And the results from this project are absolutely thrilling reading, and we have to compliment, we've got to praise Leon and certainly Shan for keeping both of us on our feet in terms of demonstrating that this data is absolutely reliable and it's what we've managed. So of the 39 heifers that I inspected, and as I mentioned, the boluses were in good time so that we could have the bolus established to assess what happened to the heifers. We started on AI on June 16th, and every one bar one, so 38 heifers out of 39 have been served. That was in 20 days, and that includes one today, if I'm correct, Leon. And that is excellent. It's another matter, of course, when we scan them to see if they're in calf or not, but without actually inseminating them, it's not possible to have any heifer or cow in calf. And I think that speaks volumes that this combination of a traditional approach that's tried and tested in veterinary systems can work exceptionally well and can complement the most recent technology. It is dairy-derived technology, let's be honest. It's an area of work. It's a new opportunity for the bolus to show that it can actually work effectively within a suckler herd. It's then a matter for the economists to decide if that is cost effective or not. There's a few questions that have come in, Iwan, and I was conscious not to stop you halfway through your address, but a few questions, if we may, and possibly you'll help me to answer them. We've had a question come through from Devan that they had difficulty this year with getting the cows to conceive. Conception rates were down. The vet feels that it could have been down to the dry weather that we had. Could I have a quick answer to that, Ewan, please? Your quick opinion on that? I've got a few other questions to get through. Well, they have scanned quite early. I think I'll see the same, actually. There is a great variance from what I can see to date in terms of how many cows or heifers become breeding again. Leon's at the minute not sure as to when the bull goes in. It will depend a lot on how many of those earlier AI'd ones will have conceived if we are going to continue with AI or if we put the bull in. Now, I do believe we had an absolutely fantastic year last year. This type of work with heifers last year hit 90+% of heifers taken in the first 2 cycles. I don't think we'll be at that point this year. It's highly likely that the determining factor will be down to the weather. I've also seen it as I've inspected bull semen this year, something that really shows that these bulls have been dehydrated, although that they look perfectly fine visually. Thank you. We've got a few questions that have come in. If we get some quick answers. Hugh Jones, hi Hugh. How do you manage to catch the cattle in the field to do AI? I think that a video clip has shown how they are gathered into that race system. So if you could just give us a quick explanation on that, how do you handle the cattle? We try to bring them to the race facility for when it comes time for serving. So we split the field into hectare paddocks, and then they're all funneled into one end, and there's a route that they take to the corral with some fences up by the side, so that they go straight away from the field into the handling race into the corral. And another question from a farmer that's just over the hill from here, Paul Williams Caerhythe, asking how close does the antennae have to be to the cattle? Do you have to move them? What's the range? I think it's 30 meters, as was alluded to earlier. It would be easier system if the range was greater, because it would pick them up more often, so that it wouldn't take so much work to get the data. Possibly there's something that will be looked at in future for the technology to improve, possibly, as technology changes. Hopefully that will have answered some of the questions that are coming through. And can I encourage you to continue to send your questions through to us, just to ensure that we answer the question that you want answered as an audience. We've got over 100 having tuned in this evening, so I'm certain that there'll be more questions coming through. Apologies, everyone, for interjecting. It's great to see that we are using technology and using it hand in hand with the vast experience that you have of working here. So if you could close briefly then, just to note what the next steps you feel would be appropriate as a veterinarian. How do we use this technology to serve customers in future? In terms of fertility, what Llŷn and Sian have touched on already, instead of having to check those that you've seen visually and knowing where they stand, and only by inspecting those who possibly don't come up strongly on the bolus, we'll see if we can tweak the technology, but obviously that has to run hand in hand with continued observation and continued assessment of fitness for breeding. In terms of health, it's the starting point currently, but it will help us. And in terms of our usage of antibiotics, it will be a means to reduce the rate of usage of antibiotics, and it will increase our improved information and data sets in terms of calving with this type of herd. I think that will be the second one. So this technology and the information data set that it creates, what's so important to stress is that it is reliable. Thank you. Thank you very much. Obviously, there's an opportunity or there is scope for technology and everything to be combined. And with you, obviously, at this farm, you're availing yourselves of those two things. You mentioned the BVD work that had been done there. I'm certain that a number of our listeners are aware of the Gwaredu BVD project, and I'm glad to be able to announce that they've had a 6 months extension to the project. So that project will continue now up until the end of March 2021. So it's a longer time yet to test your herd for BVD. Hopefully it affords an opportunity for certain farmers to take tests yet again. Gwion's asked a question, wanted to add in terms of the return on investment. Gwion, if you could possibly join the conversation again and note the points that you wanted to make. Yes, the only thing I wanted to add really, Debbie, was the return on investment with technology such as this. There isn't yet a definite figure. It's going to be unique for every farm and every situation. When you look at a pedigree herd, possibly the return on investment could happen on a heifer that you wouldn't see bulling previously, or if you have a calving alert and if you manage to save a calf that wouldn't have lived otherwise. Return of investment is something that will be unique to every setting or every farm that uses it. And since I'm on screen at the moment, I'll just talk about the range question that was touched on earlier. I'm aware that the range of the bolus will increase to over 100 meters in the near future. So it is an exciting time for technology to be utilized within red meat production and agriculture as a whole, to be honest. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gwion. I think that gives us a pretty good outline. We'll have a chat right at the end to bring everyone together just to finish off. But I'll also just talk a bit about the animal health clinics that are available via Farming Connect. There is money available for sampling and obtaining one-to-one advice. for things such as blood testing, looking at scab, fertility, FEC, or even postmortems, a number of things that you touched on earlier there. So it is a good opportunity for you to avail yourselves of to get some very experienced individuals to work with you. And I wanted to talk a bit about some of the other projects that we have ongoing in the demonstration farms across Wales. This is one of 6 live from the farm events. The next one is in a fortnight's time from Mountjoy by Haverfordwest. That's a dairy farm. And they've been doing some genetic work and some grassland work there, so hopefully you'll be able to tune in to that event as well. But also, I hope that you'll be able to look at some of the other activities that we have ongoing on demonstration farms and sites. We've got a project to improve herd efficiency on a farm in Bryn Cardigan, looking at different methods of fattening animals there. Cemgwili by Llanidloes, where we are looking to use less concentrates, using more clover and so forth on that farm. In Bodwyn, Llyn Peninsula, we are looking at, again, cattle fattening there. Henry Van Gogh, down near Cardiff, where we look at soils and the improvement of soil fertility and looking at carbon footprinting. I think we are behind it in terms of time, so we'll move on to the next speaker quickly, and I'll hand you over to John Richards, who's the HCC lead on industry development. Hebiki Cymru. He'll give us a market outlook and an update. I'm certain that a number of you will be keen to tune into this just to understand a bit more about where the market stands and what the trading conditions are currently. So, John, over to you. Thank you very much, all. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. And I'm thankful to Sian and Leon for hosting this event this evening. We can hear the rain coming down behind you guys there. It's quite novel to be sat inside while you're out there. But first of all, to talk about the importance of this work that's being undertaken. At Hebiki Cymru, we are in a project currently called Stock Plus. And in this project, we are working with veterinarians and farmers to look at how we could possibly improve flock health and herd health. And we work with over 100 beef farmers, and the 2 main issues that we've seen on that are Johne's disease and fertility, and we've heard of both of those issues from you this evening. So it shows the level of importance that those issues have, the way that we need to learn from what's happening at Moelogan and what we can learn via the project and what we've heard and what we can learn from the veterinarians. It's absolutely important that we have that conversation as often as possible with these people who are experts in their field, who know what's important in terms of herd health. Another reason why this work is so important, we've talked about return on investment this evening, but what we have to bear in mind when we look at cost of production work, the one thing that comes out time and time again when you look at meat production systems, the greatest difference or the biggest differential from farms that are in the top third and the bottom third, it's how many kilograms that's produced per cow, and obviously the cost themselves to see how much is fed. But in terms of the kilograms produced per animal, that's the biggest driver, and it's down effectively to fertility and how many calves can be born and reared and finished every year. If you can have 1 calf from every cow per year, that's the biggest challenge. I understand that we are behind time, so I will provide a quick and concise update, but just to give you a picture of where we stand in terms of the beef market currently. Obviously, the impact of COVID-19 has been felt, especially when the pandemic first hit, when we saw that the price of beef had fallen significantly. But over the past 2 months or so, we have seen that the beef prices have improved on store cattle and also in terms of finished cattle. At the minute, we're hovering around an average of 360 to 365 per kilo on the hook. And that's about 30 pence up from this time last year, and that's positive. We've seen that the supermarkets and the butchers have done some excellent work during this difficult period in promoting and in trying to get customers to buy different cuts of meats, pieces of meat and cuts that they would traditionally be buying. And in light of that, we have seen that the price has increased and has improved over the past couple of weeks. And as I said, currently as we moved into summer, the price is pretty high. In terms of the throughput that we've seen, the numbers that have gone down through the abattoirs, down from this time last year. COVID has obviously impacted the food service sector, so it has impacted the number of people who are able to eat out. But hopefully, in future, as we see the restrictions being eased, hopefully we will see that there will be greater demand from food service. Possibly we've seen that already. What food service offers us, we've talked about Carcass Balance on numerous occasions. What it means essentially is the greater part of the carcass that we can cut up and sell to various places, the better, because you can try to get the best possible price. To be honest, what has happened is that more of the carcass has been going into mincemeat, and as a result of that, because of the price average, we can see that the price that can be paid for the carcass has reduced, and that has an effect. Now, as the food service sector reopens, as the restrictions are eased, and as the butchers and the supermarkets are doing more work to try to encourage people to buy the more expensive cuts of meat, possibly, than just mince, we can see that the price that can be paid back to the farmer has improved and has increased. And that is something that's come through over the past few weeks. And hopefully that'll be a continuing trend. We've also seen that from customers, there have been various reports recently, and it shows that customers have had more time during this period, with many having to work from home or having been put on furlough or whatever else. But because of that, they've come into a pattern of cooking at home, and a number have turned and said that they would like this pattern of cooking at home to continue after the restrictions are lifted, after COVID-19 runs its course. The challenge for us as an industry is to ensure that red meat is a part of the diet that they consume at home, and that they do cook and prepare it at home. A lot of the work that we're doing currently looks at getting people to promote that, putting menus on our website, by working with the supermarkets and the butchers to do that for us. The challenge will be when people return to a more normal pattern as they would have pre-COVID, will they have time on their side to do that? But we do hope that they will see that the quality that they eat from home cooking has improved, and it's something that they can look at as a family activity. By affording them that opportunity, hopefully we'll see that more and more people will turn to purchasing and cooking meat at home, as opposed to relying on pre-prepared meals, etc. So that's one of the greatest challenges for us. And also, we are looking to see if there's anything that we can do in terms of exporting beef. That's important. We don't export as much beef as we do lamb, but that export market for beef is continually improving. So hopefully we'll be able to see, as we move through the summer and into the autumn months, that we'll be able to continue to export, because by striking this balance of being able to eat at home, being able to eat out and export, hopefully that will paint a positive picture for us in terms of the work that we do with Habiki Cymru. Over the past few months, since COVID kicked in, we've been doing a lot of work jointly with AHDB in England and QMS in Scotland, and also our own legwork in terms of promoting produce to customers, promoting local purchasing, and getting them to buy parts of the carcass that they possibly wouldn't have had the confidence to buy in the past. And we've seen that there has been an impact. It's been a positive effect. We've worked with butchers, we've worked with a number of chefs to essentially provide people with recipes that they can follow. People currently like to follow a recipe that they see online or on TV, and they go through that cooking process themselves. I appreciate the time is not on our side this evening. I'm happy to take any questions if there are, but I'll hand you back to Dewi Llion and Shannon Farm.
Gret, diolch o'r iawn ti, John.
Thank you very much, John. I think that you covered a lot of ground there in a short space of time. We've had a few questions that have come in specifically for you. In terms of export, can you just give us a précis of the impact of COVID on export, especially with lamb, because it's absolutely imperative that we are able to export. We export so much to foreign shows. And the other question, I know that you've run a number of campaigns jointly with the HDB, as you mentioned. What's the next step for HCC Hybrid Cymru? What will you do next? Good questions there. In terms of exports, as you would anticipate, COVID has borne an impact on the market. Obviously, the eatery market has dwindled in this country, and similarly the case on the continent. But what we see as a positive is, despite that issue, we've seen that the volume of meat, lamb particularly, that has been exported is still relatively high. Yes, it's down from 12 months ago, but it does demonstrate that there are customers out there who wish to purchase the meat, and that is an important point to keep in mind. No one this evening, thankfully, have mentioned Brexit, the B word. Obviously, that's ahead of us, but the markets to have on the continent are important. Hopefully, we'll be able to carry on serving them. In terms of the work that we do as Hybrid Cymru, as you mentioned, we've done joint work with other bodies and our own work on beef. And the first thing that we did when COVID kicked in really was the work on beef, because we could see that the price had taken a hit. Now, as we move through the summer months, we have changed the work somewhat to promote lamb. It tends to be in August and in September into October. That's when we see the lamb coming onto the market. So yesterday, as it happened, we started a new campaign that again will look to get people to buy more lamb cuts and to cook it at home, and hopefully you will see that this campaign is something that will be run throughout the summer months, and there'll be ample opportunities to see that we've gone for outreach. We are confident that the greater part of the population will come into contact with this campaign, and hopefully we'll see the same results as we've seen with beef. Okay, thank you, John. If I could bring the whole panel in then, please. There's a few more questions, and we'll ask those to everyone if we can, and we'll answer together. I want to revisit that question about costs again. I've got a question that goes back to costs again. Also, I've had a question about the Yoni's status of the herd. Where do you stand in terms of that? We've just started for a period of 2 years. We've been testing to under the Premium Health Scheme. So if we're clear this year, we move up another level. It's difficult to get short of it, but it is one of the most important things to keep under control as you strive for your objectives. So if we can have the whole panel on screen, I'm sure that our facilitator can ensure that we're all on one screen, if possible.
So I think I'll switch to the English so that we all can understand. We've had another question just asking if we could revisit the cost. And Leon was also asking, Helen, if you could just confirm that there is a lifetime guarantee with those boluses. So you mentioned there was a 4-year battery life on them. So once that battery life diminishes, there'll be another one then that you can apply or insert.
Yeah, that's the case for people that are setting up. If they were to buy the system now with Clean and Shine, it was slightly different because we did a slightly different price for Moelogan. So we will have to discuss that.
Good luck to having that conversation. No, thanks for clearing that up. And also, so going back to the costs, I think I've got them written down. So Helen, you mentioned the £4,000 for the initial outlay and then £30 per bolus. Yes, I appreciate that. There's, I guess the pricing structures are changing as the technology develops. In accordance with probably each individual farm as well. So if you could just perhaps explain a bit more on the costing structure, if you could please.
Yeah, sure. The basic setup, the £4,000 is for a solar unit, the base station, and then us actually installing it, and all the support that goes with that, training and so on. And then, as we said, the £30 a bolus for the classic bolus, and then they pay £3 a month for that bolus for a maintenance fee, which that's what gives them the lifetime guarantee on the bolus and so on, which is slightly different for Sean and Cleon.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Just hopefully that answers some of the questions that's coming through, particularly on cost. There's quite a few on cost coming through, as you'd expect, really, and hopefully we've addressed them. Can you perhaps explain a bit more about your experiences with sort of setting up the equipment and how effective it's been?
It was really straightforward, wasn't it? And the support, I have to say, from Helen has been fantastic. She's been replying to us on weekends, evenings, everything, at any time really, to be fair. But the initial setup was quite easy, wasn't it? We put the bolus in ourselves.
Yeah, it's just like putting a normal trace element bolus in. Really.
Yeah.
Just,
and then Helen talked us through how to download the messenger on the desktop on our phones as well. Pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's certainly a lot where I'm really pleased that we're involved, as Farming Connect, we're involved in the project. We're pushing the boundaries of the technology, and also Helen is supportive, providing that additional support to you as well. And working with E1, I think is you've got a good team on board there, and hopefully we'll be able to carry on the story and making sure that the farmers can learn from these experiences and from the questions we're coming through. It's good to see that obviously there's a lot of interest there as well. Just one coming through here. One question perhaps for Helen then, and perhaps Gwion can add to this. Is there any it's in Welsh. Oes yna fwriad o ddatblygu'r bolus just ar gyfer rhoi rhybu'r lloia? So is there any chance of developing the bolus just for carving?
Not at this stage, because I think in the future they might have the choice of just having a carving module. So maybe that maintenance fee per month we would switch off other things and they just have the carving. But that's not something we'd do at the moment. There are other products out there that would do just carving, but from our point of view, it's very important for us to give this whole package, not just one thing. It's got to be the health, the carving, and the heat detection.
Great, thanks very much. So there's obviously a lot of opportunity that the technology can offer as well, and I appreciate there's other developments that could happen. We're working with the demonstration sites. We're using LoRaWAN technology. Some of the techie people listening in might know what that is, but it's a different frequency that we're using and a different technology, and we're looking at how we can develop that technology, and it could well be for this type of technology. We're also working with North Wales Police to see how that can improve on farm security, so hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate how we can use new technology, very similar if you like to this, but to improve farm security. So that's something else that we're developing on our demonstration sites at the moment. I think we're coming to an end now. I'll just do a quick time check. So yeah, it's 9 o'clock, so can I bring in please Gito? I know Gito, you've been listening for most of the evening, but if you can just help me to wrap up and just perhaps explain a bit about the services that's available, gwasanaethau sydd ar gael drwy cyswllt ffermio. Gito, drosodd I ti.
Helo, Osmai. Noswaith dda.
Good evening, everyone. I won't keep you long. There's a lot of things that have been covered already, but I'm the development officer for Conwy, where Moelogan is based, and it's just a stone's throw from my home. So just to touch briefly on what's available currently, I can see the presentation in front of me now. The digital surgeries are available currently, where you can have an hour with a consultant covering all types of issue, business, nutrition, legal, many things mentioned already this evening, and one of the most popular ones currently would be looking at soils and grasslands. So you can have an hour on the phone or digitally to look at grazing systems and starting that process of setting up a rotational grazing system as is in Moelogan. Another one is marketing, people looking at other options that's available for their farming business, coupled with the red meat or the dairy. The application window for training has just closed. The next one will open in September, October. Leon mentioned that he had been on an AI course a few years ago via Farming Connect. He was 80% funded for that course. And obviously the cost element is very small and pays for itself quickly. So there's 80% available for training. If you think about next winter, spring, looking at shearing for next year, then the opportune time to apply for funding for those courses would be in the September window. There's an exciting opportunity available currently for people who are looking to be part of discussion groups, specifically focusing on sheep. I think Leon didn't tell you, but he's a part of a discussion group that I'm running in the Cornwall Valley, which has been running for a few years. He's a very faithful member of the group and a great contributor to the group, and hopefully it's a part of improving business efficiency. So that this first new sheep discussion group application window closes shortly. It's on the Farming Connect website, and please submit your application to join the group, where there's a pre-arranged structure of meeting that'll be run over the next 18 months, starting in August, hopefully. And it's an opportunity essentially to look at business efficiency, to discuss with some very educated people, and an opportunity to look at benchmarking, an opportunity to compare with yourself from year to year, but also an opportunity to discuss with others or to compare with others who farm on a similar landscape as yours, or who utilize a similar system to yours. So it's an excellent opportunity. Please do make the most of it and get your application in by the close of play on Friday. Dewi has touched briefly on the animal health clinics. That's hot off the press. This doesn't open until Monday, as it happens. These were run last year, where you can have up to £250 worth to look into any issues that you have, an opportunity to work with your veterinarian. So blood testing, there's been a lot of talk about fertility this evening, looking at bull fertility, looking at ram fertility. The worming period is up and coming, an opportunity to undertake some FEC testing free of charge. That's open on Monday. It'll be open throughout the summer, and you have to submit an application before you're able to undertake the work. You can speak to a vet or to ourselves, and there's a short turnaround time for that. So it's an opportunity that you can take.
Great.
There we have it. Thank you very much, Guitar. So I think that we will draw things to a close. Apologies that we have overrun somewhat on time, but hopefully you've enjoyed. There's been a few more questions that have come that shows a fair bit of enthusiasm for the work that's going on here in Moelogan. So it's important that you continue to keep on observing how this technology works, but we will answer those questions that have been submitted via email. The only thing that I have left to do is to thank Sian and Leon for all your work in preparing for this and for committing to this project. We truly appreciate your commitment, and a lot of people will learn from your experiences, hopefully. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. And that takes us on to thanking our audience for tuning in this evening. Enjoy the remainder of your evening. When you leave this link, there will be an opportunity for you to complete an evaluation questionnaire. I'd be thankful if you could complete that for us to learn about what you would like to see covered over the forthcoming weeks. Thank you very much. From Moelogan, goodbye.